Welcome back, guys, to another DIY project. I'm so excited for this table because it's super easy, because you don't have to saw anything, you don't have to cut anything, you literally just have to glue, plaster and smooth out. So in this box here I've got my legs that we're going to use for this table, and I got them from a company called TLC. They do, as you can see, electrical distribution. So they sell random stuff for like electrical and plumbing and stuff like that. So what I got, I'm gonna open this box for you guys and show you. They're called duct pipes. They look like this. They're perfect. They are perfect. So these are gonna be our legs. They literally come in this size. So this is the size. This is 35 millimeters in height. So 35 centimeters in height. And then the tabletop, as you can see in the back, is 5 centimeters. So we'll add and make this table about 40 centimeters, which is the standard height for a table. So I bought 3 of these, and they were really cheap, really cheap. These were the cheapest ones I could find. Just gonna hold this up so you guys know the measurements that you need to look for. So they are 150 millimeters vent. They call it vent pipe, but on other websites they're also called ducting pipes. So I think they were £2.50 or something like that each. And then because I wanted it quickly, I basically paid extra for next day delivery. I ideally wanted them to be slightly bigger as far as diameter. These are only 15 centimeters, but they don't come in that size. I've looked everywhere online. I think these types of pipes, or whatever you call it, only comes in 10 centimeter ones or 15. There's nothing bigger than that as far as I could find. And I didn't want to do any cutting. I didn't want to do any cutting or any sawing. So I just thought, it's fine. By the time we put plaster around it and stuff like that, it's going to become a bit wider anyways. It's going to make it look wider. So I think these will be perfect. So as far as what you need besides the pipes, you obviously need a board. I bought this from Von House, or Von How, I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's a website in the UK, and it's actually a table. It came with legs and everything, but I'm obviously not going to use the legs, and this is how it looks on the back side, as you can see. But I like this because it was so thick. Normally if you make this type of table, you would have to go and buy a board. You have to go all the way to B&Q or Selco, buy a board. You wouldn't have to cut it. You wouldn't have to, because they don't make this thick board, you would have to cut 2 boards and put them together and glue them together and all that, because in order to make this thickness. So I just decided to buy this, and it was £50, and to me it's worth it, because by the time I go all the way to B&Q, have it cut, meaning I have to cut it myself, because B&Q can't cut round circular shapes. So you have to do all that yourself, then you have to do it twice because you have to have, double the thickness. It's just too much work. This is gonna cost me probably the same, so yeah, I ended up with that. Then you're gonna need some plasterboard joint tape. This is also called drywall tape, or mesh tape, and we have to put this all over the table around the edges, the same way all around the pipe. I got this from Screwfix. You can find this literally in any hardware store pretty much. Then we have the Plaster of Paris, which is what we're gonna obviously put on top of the table and the legs. And this is from Hobbycraft. As you can see, I got a 2.5 kilo bag, so I'm hoping it's gonna last me long enough. You just mix this with water. So you're gonna need a bucket, obviously, to mix your plaster, something to mix it with, and then to spread it. I'm using actually a wallpaper smoother. You can use, any other tool. I'm just going to use this, and I think it's going to be pretty easy to spread it around like this. But you can also use a brush. To just finish it up, I'm going to probably use a brush. And then you also need another brush for your PVA. I'm going to use PVA to seal it. PVA is actually a multi-purpose adhesive, so you can use it as an adhesive, or you can also use it as a primer and a sealer. So I'm going to use it as a sealer to seal everything, so that obviously, it doesn't chip and stuff like that. And then to glue the legs, we're going to use No More Nails. Really strong glue. I was going to use wood glue, but I feel like I probably need something much stronger, so I thought this will probably do it. So yeah, let's get started. Lastly, you also need obviously some sanding blocks or just sandpaper to kind of smooth out the plaster once it's dry, to make sure it's pretty much even and stuff. I'm gonna start off by taking the the tape and just attaching it to the edge. Firstly, it's gonna start anyway, it doesn't really matter where, to be honest. Ooh. Just turn it all the way around. Wow, I'm kind of dizzy, guys, like looking at this mesh, because it's like grits, it kind of makes me dizzy. I'm not going to start in the middle. I'm just going to work my way like that. I'm not going to try and do round circles. It's going to be much harder. It's going to be a lot easier to just do it like this. We are getting here. We got all these three now ready to go. Now I'm just gonna mix the plaster. I think I need a bigger bucket, so I'm gonna use this instead to mix the plaster. Okay, I'm hoping you guys can still hear me. I'm actually using a face mask for this and gloves because I don't want to inhale any of this. I know it's not like toxic, but I'm very sensitive to things, so I'm just making sure that I don't get any of this. So you mix it 2 parts powder and 1 part water. I'm just gonna pretty much eyeball it. That's pretty much what I do everything in life. So here we go, baby. A pretty good consistency. It's kind of like frosting. I can't really explain it. I hope you guys can see the consistency. Let me zoom in a bit. Maybe you can see the consistency better. So I'm just gonna start now by spreading the plaster out on the legs, or the pipes I should say. I was going to use this, but this is more for the tabletop. We can try and see. Oh, actually, yeah, this works very well. This is very satisfying, guys. I can't explain, like, this is literally giving me life. I kind of want a little bit of texture. So, like, I've seen people do this and they basically just, you know, leave some of the, like, you see how you got the marks here after I've spread it out? They kind of just leave it like that because they want it to look like that. And I kind of do like that. I like the idea of that, but I don't want it to be too uneven. For the first layer, I'm gonna make it as smooth as possible. Then if I go over it, I can then add, you know, the texture part of it. This works really well. This is actually amazing. I'm so glad I got this. It was for wallpaper smoothing out. For smoothing out wallpaper, but you know what? This stuff actually works for what we're doing here. So done 2 of them as you see in the back. Now look at this. This is literally almost dried. This is, I tried to put more water in to kind of smooth it out, but it's not working. So this is really so important to remember this step, to only mix a small amount at a time, because you're not going to have time to do all of these. By the time this is going to be dry, you've literally wasted product. So this is a mistake that I've learned. I knew that I should only mix a little bit, but I didn't know how little. So what I mixed earlier was way too little. So now I have to make another batch, but I'm going to make such a smaller batch because I don't want to waste it. So far this is what we got. I've only done 1 layer, so you can still see like the marks or like the mesh. So what I'm gonna do now is do a second layer, so obviously this can be covered. So far I really like it. I like this texture of it. It looks kind of like, how can I put it? I don't know, but it looks really nice. I'm really pleased. So I'm gonna just do a second layer and I'll be back, and then we're gonna work on the headboard. I mean the tabletop. We're gonna work on the tabletop. I've already made a small mix. I learned my mistakes, guys. I'm gonna do this in sections. So just spreading it out like this. And then I'm using this tool, of course. So I've done the first layer now. I haven't done the edges yet. I'm gonna do them now, and then I'm gonna do a second coat. I think this might need 3 coats though, because you're definitely gonna see it, so I'm gonna probably have to do 3 coats, whereas the legs I only did 2 coats, and I think that's fine. I might do a 3rd coat. I don't know how I feel. I feel like 2 coats is fine. You're not really you're gonna see the legs obviously, but you're not gonna see them so up close as much as you're gonna see, you know, the tabletop. So yeah, I'm gonna just do the edges now. I just ended up putting the board on top of the legs. It's not glued on or anything, but I literally just realized this is much easier to do when you're trying to do the edges. So as you can see here, you can still see some of the edge of the mesh tape. I'm gonna obviously cut this off afterwards once I file everything down, like sanding it. So don't worry about that for now, but I'm just gonna go over another coat of both the top and the edges, and then we're gonna sand it down a bit and then apply the PVA. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna figure out where to put the legs, and I'm gonna make sure that what side of I want it to be at the bottom. Probably this. Figure out the placement. I was going to put them like really close to the edge, but I don't think I like that. I like when there's a little bit of a gap, to be honest. So all I need to really do is make sure that it's the same amount of gap between here and here, and then between there, kind of. Because it's 3 legs, obviously you kind of have to just, you know, eyeball it a bit. I'm gonna measure it in a minute. But yeah, I'm gonna use this glue here, like I showed you in the start. No more nails, and I'm just gonna glue that around the edge, and yeah, hopefully that will stick to the table enough, and then I'll be back. So just put some weight on the table to kind of put some pressure on the legs so that the glue would actually stick. I found it that this glue isn't like, it's taken very long to dry. It's been like this for 2 hours now. I know it's not going to dry completely in 2 hours, but I would expect it to at least dry to the point where I can lift the table. But it's not doing that, so I'm just going to leave it overnight, and then I'll be back tomorrow. It is now the next morning, and last night I just wanted to check on the legs to see if they were like, you know, a little bit just, you know, glued on, and they just came right off. So I don't know if it's the glue that I used or if I did anything wrong, but it didn't stay. So what I ended up doing was actually using some wood glue. This is from B&Q, just like a really basic wood glue. So I added that there, and then I glued it back on, the legs back on. And now it looks like, see what I moved them. It's still a little bit, they're on now. If I turn the table around, they will stay, which is good. But I feel like it's still not properly glued on. So I don't know if I put too little glue, or maybe because they're like edged, like this edge but here. I don't know if that wasn't like smooth enough or flat enough for it to stay. No idea, but as you can see, it's a whole mess around here, but I don't care because obviously that's just underneath, so you're not really going to see that. But now I'm going to turn the table around, and I'm going to sand it down, and then I'm going to seal it. So I've got these sanding blocks that I'm going to use now to kind of just file down some of the edges. Hopefully some of the plaster doesn't come off, but it shouldn't do. It's mainly the corners that I'm worried about because you can kind of still see some of the mesh tape. So yeah, I'm just trying to kind of work on that and smooth that down a bit. I really like the texture of it though. I like the fact that you can kind of see a little bit of detail, right? You can see it on the camera that it has a little bit of unevenness to it, which gives it so much character. And obviously that's the whole thing about plastering. Like, it's not going to be real smooth, especially not when you make a table like this. And that's the beauty of it. But like overall, I am in love with this table. It's so gorgeous. So I just want to show you guys a prime example of something here. As you can see, there's a little chip here. And that's because I'm trying to basically cut off. You see these little, the mesh pieces that are hanging down? I'm trying to cut them off. But when you do that, you're kind of cutting the plot. It's hard to explain. Like, I'm being very, very gentle. I'm not even like going very deep. But even though you do that, somehow it rips off some of the mesh tape. And then it leaves this. So now I'm going to have to go over and kind of patch up these, the pieces that have been flaked off, and then I can finally seal it. So just be careful when you cut these pieces off. I'm trying to be as careful as possible. But yeah, I definitely know for next time to not put the mesh tape maybe so close to the edge. But then I was worried that if I didn't put it all around the edge, that the plaster wouldn't stick. The whole reason why you use the plaster, the whole reason why you use the mesh tape is because the plaster it wouldn't stick otherwise. So I'm just mixing this PVA adhesive. As I said before, you can use it as a primer or as a sealer, as you can see here. And for this you need to dilute 1 part PVA with 4 parts of water. And then you just mix it and brush it on the surface. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mix it inside here. Obviously, it's a little bit more thick than like milk. I don't know what kind of consistency I can call this. But just like a tad thicker than like milk, you know? Not too thin, not too thick. It's obviously a primer, so you want it to go on very smoothly. But before I do that, I'm going to take my brush and just wipe off any like dust. To make sure that the surface is clean, and to also make sure there's no like hairs or anything like that. I'm gonna take my PVA and just dip it. It's also really important to make sure that your brush is clean. This brush I'm using is quite cheap, so it will probably leave some some feathers, you know, like how these usually come out. So just be careful when you do it if you're using like a cheap brush like me.